Hello again. Ghana's year-on-year inflation rate has dropped sharply to 3.8% in January 2026. That is the lowest level recorded since rebasing in 2021, according to the latest data from the Ghana Statistical Service. The figures show that price increases have slowed significantly nationwide, with month-on-month inflation easing to just 0.2%. However, the data also reveals wide regional disparities, with some parts of the country still experiencing double-digit inflation, while others record outright deflation. Now, speaking at the release of the figures, government statistician Alhassan Idrisu explained what is driving the sharp disinflation.
The data tell a very clear story. Inflation has fallen sharply and consistently over the year. Price pressures are easing across most components of the CPI. While challenges remain, particularly in some regions and food categories, the overall trend is positive. This creates space for planning, confidence, and recovery. In summary, in terms of numbers, we are talking about January 2026 recording an inflation rate of 3.8%. Food inflation at 3.9%, non-food inflation at 3.9% as well. Goods inflation at 3.6%, services inflation at 4%. Inflation for locally produced items at 4.5%. And then we have regional differences, which shows that Northeast recorded the highest inflation at 11.2%, and Savannah recorded the lowest at negative 2.6%.
So my colleague Caleb Ziblim of the research desk is joining me in the studio for more on this. Caleb, what does the headline inflationary figure really say?
So Ken, this is the lowest we are seeing. So for January 2026, the inflation rate was 3.8%. And that's since the 2021 rebasement. So in 2021, the entire inflation basket was rebased. And so that's where you should do the comparison to 2021. But then if you go a bit further, we did from 2000 to 2026. This is the lowest we've seen since 2000. And if you go back further, you see that this is the lowest since 1999. And that's August 1999, where the inflation rate was about 1.9%. So this is the lowest inflation rate since August 1999. As you can see from the chart, if you use the 2021 rebasing, this is the lowest since 2021. But then if you zoom out a bit, this is the lowest since 1999.
What does the 2021 rebasing mean?
It just means that the entire basket of goods, inflation, we use a basket of goods. We don't use all the things produced and sold within the country. We use a certain basket of goods to determine inflation. So that what's in that particular basket, if it goes up during the time they are monitoring it, that means that there's been some inflation. If the goods within that basket also comes down, it means that's deflation. So that entire basket was rebased. So they took the entire basket, different baskets from previous years, they added some to it and all of that. So that's what we call the rebasing. So that happened in 2021. So that basket was rebased in 2021.
Okay.
And then comparing that basket in 2021 to now, it has gone up by 3.8%. But then if you zoom out again, that's since 1999. And again, I think I should just put a disclaimer out there that this means prices have gone up. So the 3.8% means that prices have gone up by about 3.8% compared to last year. Now the difference is that prices are going up at a
slower pace.
A slower pace, exactly. So even though this 3.8% is very low, it still means that prices are going up. It just means that your prices should be very stable. So for the next month or two, you should see prices remain almost where they are. But then we have some goods that are actually going down. Most of them, they are agricultural goods, the tomatoes, garden eggs, and some of them. So we have some deflation in some areas, but the overall picture is that prices are increasing, but then we're going to see some stability moving forward. And then if you look at the top contributors to the inflation rates, these are what made us get high inflation. We have charcoal, green plantains, ginger, and then the interesting ones I saw was SHS fees. And
right.
It's interesting because we have free SHS, but then in the reports it says public and private SHS fees. So I think the report was talking more about what you pay to go to school, your prospectus and all of that.
Not necessarily school fees.
Not necessarily school fees. And then that might be on the high side. And then again, basic education. This is paid for by the private side. I think public also, you pay some few fees here and there. So also, free SHS, and then the basic education, this contributed to the top 20 contributions to the inflation basket in June 2026. So I think from a policy point of view, the government should really understand and help us understand why the free SHS fees was included and then the basic fees as well. I think the books and all of that contribute to the high inflation rates we are seeing. But then again, this is the lowest we've seen since 1999, August 1999, and then the lowest since the 2021 rebasement. And then finally, if you look at the regions, you can see that there are a few regions where there was actually a deflation. Now, in this case, prices in those regions actually reduced. So we have the OT region, the Upper East region, and the Savannah region. The Savannah was the highest with 2.6% deflation. Again, this means that prices in those regions should be relatively cheaper compared to other regions. And then the most expensive was the Northeast region with 11.2%, followed by the Volta region, Eastern region, and the Western region. Interestingly, the Greater Accra region was somewhere around the lowest, that's about 3%. And usually almost all the activity happens in Greater Accra and the Ashanti region. So it's interesting to see that the Greater Accra region was not amongst the highest and one of the lowest. But then the highest was the Northeast region. And then where we saw deflation, again, prices reduced in that particular region was the OT region, the Upper East region, and the Savannah region.
Caleb Ziblim, thank you very much. Let's expand the conversation and go on to Zoom right now and speak to Associate Professor of Finance at Andrews University in Michigan, USA, Williams Prepra, for more on this. Mr. Prepra, grateful for your time this afternoon. 3.8% inflation. What's your initial reaction to that?
Good afternoon to you and good afternoon to your viewers. My initial assessment of this is that, it comes at a very good news to us, especially for those of us who are outside, to our family members, where we see that averagely prices are going down. What really touched me was to see that locally produced items were cheaper than imported ones. This is telling us that Ghanaians should now be focusing on buying made in Ghana and then getting the value for it, and also making sure that our production increases within what we have in Ghana. This is my initial assessment.
And what do you think we should do to maintain this downward trend? Because for consecutive months, we've seen that inflation has been going down.
If you go back into like the last 5 years, Ghana's food basket determination, or the CPI indexing, is really affected by food, agricultural production. So we should focus on making sure that one, we are able to produce more and also eat what we produce. Also, if there is a way that we can store, because of the seasonalities of the weather and also the farming season in Ghana, so that in periods where we may not find the tomatoes, the onions that we all know, there should be enough in the system, and that will be able to bring down the prices or stabilize the CPI indexing. So this is what we need to do. I know the previous government tried to build about 800 or 1,000. That's why they had 1,000 warehouses. We just got to know that they could not complete any of them. So if this current government can focus on that one and make sure that these warehouses across the country are completed, and then we can store some of our own agricultural products and then use them in seasons where they are in scarce supply. Right. Then we'll be able to maintain the CPI index as we have it now.
And some Ghanaians are saying that this latest inflationary figures are not reflective in their pockets. What could be the reason?
First, let's remember that determination of inflation is based on selected items. And then also the statistical way of doing it, Ghana Statistical Service does not do, the model they follow is not purely random. It's a non-probability way of doing it. So not all items that we find in the market to be in the basket. So probably they may be talking about, let's say, the onions or tomatoes. Whichever market they went to, the price they find there is what they use. Maybe they went to Kumasi, but if you want to find the tomato price in Accra, it may be different. So CPI, inflation prices, because of the way we do the computation, is an average and not a specific situation. It's just telling you that averagely, this is how prices have moved within. So you may find a situation where in some areas prices have really dropped, and for the same item, you go to another area, price has gone up. But there are a lot of general items that I know that in Ghana are going down, which we all know. Fuel is one of them. There's the general trend, and normally when it goes down, we see the trickle down effect. And also one important thing, especially with the importation items, exchange rate has city has strengthened, and this is one of the reasons why you see that it's now saying that local manufactured products are cheaper because they're able to get raw materials coming in at a lower rate, and production is also increasing. So these are some of the factors.
We saw at least two regions recording deflation. Is that a good thing?
Initially, you may say it is good, but in the long run, no one wants deflation. The moment you start having deflation, it's going to have an impact on your GDP computation, because your GDP computation is the prices of goods within your country at a point in time. So if your prices are in the reverse gear, instead of you moving forward, but your prices are in the reverse gear, you see that your GDP will be affected. So countries, for us in finance and economics, we always want to see a little bit of inflation, but not at a very high speed. So deflation is something that we must watch. So what it means is that the economic management team must pay attention to those regions and see what is really causing the deflation. It can also lead to, okay, let me give you an example. So if the driver of the deflation is a result of their agricultural input, what it means is that those people in that community are going to be poorer as compared to other parts of the country. So we need to pay attention to that area and see what is really happening. Can we find a way to smoothing out agricultural product prices to reverse that deflation in those regions that have been identified? Because deflation in the long run is not good for the entire economy.
Right. William Prepra, thank you very much. He's an associate professor at the University of Michigan. But don't go yet, Mr. Prepra. Let's continue the conversation a bit. Now, how is this going to have a rippling effect on our economy? Because you have already mentioned that deflation is going to affect our GDP. With the overall inflation of 3.8%, what impact is it going to have on our economy, really?
So at the moment, averagely, we will say we are on course. But the long run effect, if we keep on seeing inflation going down to a point of zero and moving to a negative figure, the impact will be that growth will be affected. So the overall growth rate will have to be looked at for 2026 if this trend is what we are going to see in the end. And that is what I'm also foreseeing because of the government strategy that they are doing.
Right.
So we may have to see that government, normally when these are happening, government must make sure that production or productivity is increased within the economy.
Right.
So in the areas of, I know the government says they are doing big push. Most of the big push items have not materialized. We are hoping to see them materialize in 2026. Then that will start kicking in, correcting the deflation that we are expecting. If it continues, if you see the way inflation has been dropping consistently for 13 months, if you don't take care, very soon the entire economy may have an average CPI index in a reverse or in a negative figure, which will not be good for us. So they must make sure that productivity is increased to be able to address this issue of deflation.
Right, don't go yet. I'll come back to you. But Caleb Ziblim of our research desk is still in the studio with that. Let's stay a bit longer on the economy because the Institute of Economic Affairs is taking on the government over its proposed mineral royalty regime, warning it risks locking Ghana into an outdated extractive system that gives away too much and keeps too little. The think tank is rejecting the draft Minerals and Mining Royalties Regulations 2025, which sets sliding royalty rates of 5 to 12% for gold and lithium and a flat 5% for other minerals, describing the approach as a continuation of a, quote, colonial model of resource exploitation. Caleb, take us through it.
Yeah, so you remember that the last session of Parliament, that was on 19th December 2025, the last minister, surprisingly to almost everyone, laid some regulations in Parliament to introduce a sliding scale for gold and all the other minerals produced in the country. Now, the sliding scale was interesting because that was a point where the lithium lease had to come back to Parliament, and in the lithium lease, the royalties rates was reduced from 10% to 5%. And then the governments argued that they were introducing a sliding scale later on.
Right.
If you look at Act 900, it stipulates that the ministry needs to provide regulations to introduce the royalty scheme, which after the repeal of the previous amendments to the Mining Act, that pegged royalties at 5%. It made it discretionary, and then you need regulations to make the royalty effective. So the minister introduced the royalty scale on the 19th of December, the last session of Parliament, and that will need about 21 days to mature. So now that Parliament is back in session, the counting has continued. So we are about 19 days in for the royalty sliding scale that has been laid to mature and then become law. If you look at the fine details, for gold, it ranges from 5% to 12%. And I think lithium also from 5% to 12%, while the other minerals, that's bauxite, manganese, diamond, and some others also do a flat 5%. So this is what the minister took to Parliament and has been laid, and the counting is still going on unless the minister decides to put a different regulation on the floor. So this is what's going to happen in the next 20 days, give or take. Now, the issue is that IEA is saying that we have to do away with royalties altogether. They want the minister and the ministry and the government to scrap royalties, and then they want what they call full state ownership of our resources. That's what the IEA is calling for. So they want the state to take over the entire mining sector in the country. They're also calling that the government should not renew any more mining leases. Once the mining lease ends, they should take the companies out of the country, because most of them are foreign owned. I think more than 70% of them are wholly foreign owned. We have some of them that are joint between Ghanaians and then foreigners, but then most of them are foreign owned, particularly the gold mining companies. So the IE says that when their leases come up, do not renew them, and the state should go into the mining sites and the mining fields and then develop them themselves. And that they are calling for service contracts. Now, service contract means that the state effectively owns the sites. The state is supposed to mine there, but then they are going to partner with private companies, that's local private companies. The local private company or contractor would come in with support from the government, subsidies, tax exemptions, and all of that. And then the private contractor would then mine with support from the government, and then some foreign expertise will come on board. But effectively, this means that anything that is going to mine in the country will stay within the country. They want the government to streamline the value chain so that we can add more value to it. We've been talking about value addition for a long time. That's what the IEA is calling for now, value addition. So when you mine, you add value to it before you export. And because these companies are going to be local companies and partnership with the state, the assumption is that majority of the revenue gotten is going to stay within the economy. Because sometimes with the foreign companies, when they get their revenue, you have to take back some to their headquarters, which are in other countries, and then it puts pressure on the currency. So the IEA is saying that we should do away with royalties altogether. They want the royalty sliding scale that has been laid in Parliament to be scrapped, and they're calling for the government to not renew any more mining leases, and then the state should take full ownership of the mining sector in the country.
Caleb Ziblim, thank you very much. I still have Williams Prepra, who's an associate professor at the University of Michigan in Faraway, USA. Andrews University in Michigan in Faraway, USA. What do you make of the new proposal from IEA?
I'm surprised IEA is taking us back into history. We've been there before. We know Ghana, we have had state-owned enterprises. and we know how we manage them. We were inefficient. By the time we realized, we have politicized those entities, and all of them collapsed. In my perspective, royalties, you pay it because you allow someone to use your resources or your property. So we may have gold and other natural resources. Bringing in private partners, working with the government, is going to bring efficiency. And then Ghana government is going to benefit a lot when such is done. The employment creation, the innovation that normally comes with it, also the taxes that are paid alongside are far better than getting government owning it 100%. We know entities that are owned, or SMEs that are, they call it state-owned enterprise, that are owned 100% by government. Until recently, all of them were making huge losses. This should not continue. This is a resource that must be mined, which requires a lot of capital and technology to be able to do it. So probably IEA may come back again and not take us back into history and where we failed in that production. And in my perspective, it is better for us to partner private enterprises and to be able to get all the efficiencies that are needed and be able to get the best out of our natural resources. Government must focus on two main things: getting policy established and regulate, and then allow private sector to go on. Ghana, based on our relationship with other international organizations, we've gone past state-owned 100% enterprises, and mining requires a huge capital investment.
Okay.
And the government cannot go and put, and also remember, huge capital investment and also risky. So it is better to let someone use his money to do that project, and then you benefit from it than also going in directly yourself.
Okay. Williams Prepra, thank you very much. He's an associate professor at Andrews University in Michigan, USA.